the more you start hearing about some of the names on the defensive side, it's not as barren, I think, as maybe we thought going into it. You get J.K. Johnson coming back. You have another transfer from Ohio State. Alexander's coming back. And then you saw like the wealth of opportunity that was provided because, A, you weren't healthy on the defensive back room, and you had so many young guys. And I think the bigger kicker would be Blake Baker and Corey Raymond.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were, like, I was going through Wilson's interview and some of the bullet points that he hit, and I didn't even realize it until I read it, that LSU gave up 34 points a game against Power 5 teams.
Jeez.
And you were competitive. Like, if you don't have Jaden Daniels in that offense, this would be a very different conversation you're having around Brian Kelly and LSU football, but you did. And so you essentially had to outscore every team you played, and they almost did. You give up 800 yards, still a miss, and that's how you lose. Lane loves that game.
No, I bet. I mean, this is national championship since he's been to Ole Miss.
And it took one turnover. Jaden Daniels fumbles early in the game, and that was it.
That was it.
And we'll see. I know that a lot was rumored about Harold Perkins and his role, and I think that it's the right decision to make. It just has to be executed in the right way. Because you want Harold Perkins in the action, you do, because he's a playmaker. He is somebody that can change the course of a football game. Hell, you saw him do it last year out of position. I mean, if he doesn't get the pick against Missouri, LSU probably loses that football game.
Yeah.
And so he can impact the game in a multitude of ways, but you don't want to see his numbers a lot in the back of his jersey. And that's where he kind of was in that quote-unquote star position, as it would be for Baker, where he's outside lined up on the slot. Like that's one way to take him out the game, just run a go. And now fours can't really hurt you. This way he has to be impactful. And Blake Baker's ability to improve linebacking play, like you saw with his first stint here, I think it's the right move. It just may not be palatable at first.
Yeah, and I think that the intent is right.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think
it's the execution,
the original idea of playing him on that side of the ball and learning him of what that role calls for and the responsibility of it is the right thing to do. The mismanagement of him last year was the most frustrating part, right? I mean, that was the part that just was so beyond frustrating to not only the fans. I mean, you could sense it in the people that covered the game, watched the game, would talk about the game, and breaking it down from an analytical standpoint, that it was such a head-scratching equation of why Perkins was just so out of place, right? I mean, and it's a great argument for, or it's a great point for that, on a football field, even in a bad scheme, the best players are going to rise to the top. Like, even if you try to put Perkins out of position, and that's why it was the most frustrating point, because it's hard. I'm telling you, it's a difficult thing to do to mess a player up as good as Harold Perkins. Because just by natural ability, when you throw 22 players onto a 100-yard, 52-yard wide surface, the best players they're always going to come out on top. And for Perkins, his whole life, that's how it's been. I mean, really, every football field he's ever been on, he's always been one of top 3 best players on the field. Usually the best, right? Like usually the best player on the field. And for him last season not to have a spot for the majority of the year is such a, man, it's from just a, don't want to be, too disrespectful, but from a coaching standpoint, it's just a total failure. Right? To not be able to find a spot for your best player to affect the game as much as possible. I mean, he probably made the best defensive play of the year out of position on the road at Missouri. If he doesn't make that play, that's the turnover that you have to have when you have a defense that can't get a stop and you have an offense that scores every time they touch the ball. Right? I mean, it just – so, look, in Blake Baker, I trust Blake Baker that he understands that, look, LSU should not have been as bad as they were on defense last season. I don't care if you didn't have a DB in the building or not. There's no way that LSU should be giving up 31 points a game in the league.
34.
With the players that they have. 34 points a game. So I believe that he'll be able to clip some of the low-hanging fruit here and make some marketable change overnight. I just hope when you turn on and watch LSU play next season that Perkins does not necessarily have a position, but that the coaching understands this guy is a once in a decade. You get one every 10 years. You had Matthew in 2011, 2012. You got Harold Perkins in 2022, 23, 24. Right? I mean, once a decade, one of these guys comes through here where they're, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 10 stars.
Yeah.
The beauty of Matthew was that, man, Chavis, he knew how to use him. Like, he put him different play, every play he was in a different spot.
Looked like he was playing his own game.
Which, that's how you have to use these types of players at the college level. Matthew had a little bit of the Badger in him in the NFL early on. But you can see once he gets to that field, he's a dude amongst a lot of dudes. Mm-hmm. That's how Perkins is going to be. Perkins is a standout on a college football field. At the next level, he's just another dude. So, I believe he's going to be a good pro. Jabril Peppers, those types of players, undersized, good athlete, can stay on an NFL field and make plays. I believe Perkins is going to be is going to have that type of impact. But really, this is going to be the last year of his football life that you can use him as like a true, rover. You can put him, it's like a chess piece.
Mm-hmm. That can go anywhere.
Yeah, go guard the slot, go play safety, go blitz off the edge, go play the middle. Whatever it is.
Play running back.
Yeah, it's those types of players, even in LSU's locker room, that, has in the NFL, they call the LSU locker room the jungle because it's just nothing but freaks coming out. Even in the jungle, Harold Perkins is an alpha.
Atop the mountain.
Right? So my hope in watching LSU play is that, you get, rookie year Harold Perkins games 5 through 9, where it was like, this dude, there's no answer for him.
This is the Perkins World Tour.
This is, 1 week it's Arkansas, next week it's Bama, next week it's Texas. This dude's everywhere. Right? And I know the film's out on him, but still, the film was out on him then. It wasn't as if he was a huge shock. When he got onto the field, you knew who he was. Lane Kiffin was like, I don't know what LSU's thinking, but I would not take number 40 off the field. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was like the whole game changed when 40 was playing.
What happened? They put 40 in.
Look, I talked to some personnel people that are deep in the personnel game, and they told me that Harold Perkins is what they classify as a defensive weapon.
Did you see C.J. Daniels?
Exactly.
He talked about it. He was like, dude, Perk's a dog.
Exactly. He's different.
He's like, Perk's a dog. He was like, I don't know. We even pushed him. I was like, give me a story. Like, what do you mean? He was like,
everything.
The dude's got his arm. He's like, but he's still out there.
We talk about it all the time. These athletes are the 1%ers. The 1% of the best. And when they get in that locker room, it's a bunch of 1%ers. But who's that 0.1%?
No doubt.
And Perk is that.
That's what those guys would say about Matthew back in the day.
Right.
You had, Benny Logan, Eric Reed,
Kevin
Minner.
Some dogs.
You had guys that
Sam
were
Montgomery.
Damn, these guys are real dogs.
Didn't Sam Montgomery break somebody's face at LSU?
Yes. Or he got his face broke.
It was a situation.
He laughed in somebody's face.
Exactly. It was a situation like that. But
Sam Montgomery was the one that said, I ain't a dog. I'm a wolf. I eat dogs. You're
Right.
Put a microphone on Sam Montgomery, you're going to get something.
Good Lord. But even those
Sonic
guys
Sam?
were like, hey, man, 7's different.
Yeah, like
Tyrann Mathieu he's not like us. You know, he's not like and all those guys consider themselves to be
dogs.
their
Alphas.
whole life. Their whole life. So for them to hand out a compliment ain't easy. You know what I mean? It's not easy. Even like Leonard Fournette got in a fight in the locker room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they thought they could mess. Nobody messes with Matthew. Nobody messing with Perk. You know what I mean? Like,
Except that one time at practice last year, where they thought they could mess with Perk.
Who was that? Denver and who?
It was Denver and Malik. Denver and Malik got into it initially,
Malik.
but Perk was one of the
Clean it up.
Yeah, Perk cleaned up the mess. Put it that way.
God, remember how big of a story that was? That would make sense.
And then right after
Defense is ass.
the fight, they're just like, all right, I guess I'm gonna just go back and practice. And BK's like, hold up, Harold,
Yeah.
come over here.
Yeah, that's the funniest part. He's like, he just tried to go back to the huddle. They're like, you have to sit.
Well, that's football, right?
Yeah.
Like, if
done.
you throw a punch in the game, they will kick you out here.
Now sit right.